Hi guys, the following is a conversation with the YouTuber Evildea. It was an awesome conversation, and I've been a fan of his channel for a while. So he talks about language learning and Esperanto and constructed languages and Chinese and lots of stuff that I've been interested in the past and to this day. And so it was a really cool experience to get to talk to him, especially since I watched a lot of his videos before. And also he's a fun guy. And I think the podcast, the conversation itself went really well, but there were some technical difficulties. So I definitely wanted to add this preface to kind of explain why some of the parts of it might be a little weird. So my laptop, I think, had some issues with processing the recording. I'm not exactly sure. I know how to maybe get around this in the future, but the audio was cut out for a lot of it, so I had to chop it up a little bit, remove some of these gaps in the audio. And so it isn't, as genuine of long form content as I would have hoped. So you'll kind of hear maybe the first half of the sentence and the second half of the sentence are really the first half of a paragraph and the second half of a paragraph. And so it'll kind of sound a little weird. It for the most part, I only kind of meshed sentences together when it was absolutely necessary to clarify what somebody was saying. But because it happened on my end and on his end, but I think it was technologically speaking, it was on my end, but both of our audios got kind of cut out. So I chopped it up a little bit and removed certain things that there wasn't really much salvageable, but overall it's still most of the recording preserved. So I don't want to downplay it too much. We still have a good hour of content here, and it's a great conversation, lots of interesting stuff. But yeah, just forewarning, some of it might be a little bit weird. But without further ado, here's my conversation with Evildea.
Great to have you. Pretty crazy because I watched your videos for a while, so kind of had a parasocial relationship, especially with the Esperanto videos back in the day. That was one of the first things I got really interested in with linguistics. So very cool
nice,
to be able to
nice.
talk to you.
It's always interesting to hear about people talk about my Esperanto videos. What was the one that got your attention, I guess?
I listened to. I'm trying to think of the oldest one that I probably listened to. I re-listened to some of them recently, just for the self up a little bit. You'd tell a story from your past, but in Esperanto. I thought that was really cool. And it was definitely cool to be able to. I think stories from the army or something,
Yeah.
the military. Yeah, that was fun. So definitely good memories.
Well, the good thing about telling those stories is that they're in Esperanto, so no one knows this language.
Yep,
So
only
it's
a
just
select few.
only a select few. I can't be called out by someone saying, "Hey, why you talk about
Yeah,
that?"
that is funny. Were I to be speaking a lot of Esperanto like you, maybe overusing feck,
Yeah.
because it doesn't hit the same when it's a four. Um, well, yeah, I had some questions prepared, but yeah,
Yep.
obviously we can have a free flowing conversation as well. But definitely one of the first things I wanted to ask you about was what got you into languages, linguistics, language learning? Because I know everybody's usually got a cool story for that.
Yeah, I guess my cool story started, well, it's kind of hard to say where it started, but there's a few points in my life that kind of got me. I guess the first major one was when I was in high school. I studied Japanese. But I don't remember anything of Japanese, so I don't really speak it. And I was always interested in the language, the fact that, it was a cast full of girls and I was the only guy type of thing. So it was I had ulterior motives while I was there type of thing. But we did at the end of that do a trip to Japan, and I guess that kind of made me really fascinated in other cultures overall. And I was like, you know what? I really want to do this language thing. I want to see if I'm actually smart enough to learn another language. So I tried out a bunch of different languages. I remember one day I was just online. I was like, okay, what's the easiest language in the world? I literally just Googled easiest language in the world, and it took me to a Wikipedia article about Esperanto. And, I just started doing that while I was gaming on the side, and I just did a bit more of that gaming, a bit more of that gaming. And then eventually, one day I was like, I've been at this for 3 months. So I wonder if anyone actually speaks this language nearby. And it turned out there was a group about an hour away. So I was like, okay, so that's kind of how it started for me.
That's awesome. Okay, yeah, no, I think that I can resonate with that. Wanting to just being interested in like learning a language, but and then having like yeah, like the reality of like maybe especially with a language like Japanese, I can imagine that is probably pretty difficult. I've studied that briefly, but never made too much progress.
Yep.
The but yeah, Esperanto is a great way to to learn a language or get know what it's like to learn.
In Australia, we had this thing when I was going through school where they wanted to get everyone to learn music, like to actually get into music, but they didn't want to start people with drums and pianos and stuff. So they gave everyone a recorder, which is like the most basic instrument in the world. And it didn't work out too well for me because I ate the end off of mine. But in any case, like everyone got a recorder and everyone got like a little bit of a taste of like what it is to do for music. And that's kind of like what I feel Esperanto is in a lot of ways. It's like it's a gateway to the bigger, more cumbersome languages out there.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's a good analogy. Like, um, it gets you past like the barrier that prevents you from seeing how cool it is to learn a language, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
I like that analogy for sure. Might steal that. Um, my let's see. I was also yeah. I guess I was also very interested in how you got into constructed languages, and you sort of covered that. Based off of Esperanto. I think I'm trying to remember if I mean, you were literally one of the first videos that I saw at Esperanto where I like actually understood it, and I was like, oh wait, this is kind of wild. So that feeling of understanding a language
Yep.
is definitely like really important. I do remember that. What do you think in terms of language learning in general? What do you think is something a lot of people get wrong? Because I've noticed some of your recent videos you've been giving tips and stuff. So I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
I guess the probably the biggest two things that people get wrong about language learning is one, they don't have the right motivation. So like people, I've noticed people who will go learn a language and I'll be like, oh, why you learn that? And they'll be like, oh, well, maybe I can get a job with it or something like that. And I don't feel like that's a very good motivation because like it's such a big task. So you kind of need like something else to kind of push you. That's what I feel about with languages in general. And the second biggest thing is that people will, and even I do this to this day, is they'll go searching for the perfect method to learn a language. There is really no shortcut. You just got to keep doing something with the language every day. And then eventually one day you'll be looking back and going, oh, I'm understanding these things. It's like it kind of sneaks up on you after a while, but it does take a while to get there. So I think that's probably the two main things I would say.
Yeah, I like the idea of like motivation being a big factor because it is like it's just one of those things where it gets difficult enough. There's enough plateauing where like you really do have to have like a big engine of motivation. And yeah, maybe a job might not be for some people. Maybe it is the right motivator, but for a lot of people, it might not be.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not like a really specific opportunity that they're thinking about. Like obviously, if you move to another country and need employment, it's going to be a little
Yeah.
bit easier to motivate yourself to get that job. But yeah, no,
And
that makes sense.
And additionally, like your motivations will like change over time as well. Like at the start, my motivation was just to see if I was smart enough to learn a language. And then after a while, I got into the YouTube and I did like a ton of Esperanto stuff. And my motivation there was just the fact that I wanted more people to talk with in this language. So I thought I'd just go out and help create them type of thing.
Definitely, I feel like a lot of people in the anglophone world are definitely in what it's like in general. Like it's not necessarily an immediate need. So it does. You do have to be kind of almost like a I don't know. You just have to have a very you have to have some sort of general motivation. Like, am I smart enough to learn a language? What's it like to learn a language? Like that's usually I think how a lot of people will get into it first.
Totally. And like what you were just saying there of like in the Anglophone world, like my concept of what a language was before I learned my second language was completely wrong. Like I thought, and people are probably going to laugh at me, that when you speak a language fluently, it actually just sounds like English to you. So I thought like eventually all these random sounds would turn into English for you and you'd understand it as English in your head. So I thought that's what would happen in the end, type of thing.
You adjust to the language as opposed to like the other way around, which is
Yep.
obvious. But like yeah, like I guess I always kind of thought yeah, I would have to like translate it in order translate a language in order to understand it.
And it all reminds me of like back in high school and I was learning Japanese and like I tried to write something in Japanese just to like, practice my skills. And I remember like asking the teacher how I say the word the. And the teacher just like looked at me confused, and I was like looking at her confused. I was like, "What? Is there something wrong here?" And she's like, "There is no word for that." And I was like, "What?"
Two questions sort of related, maybe not related. Answer them separately if you want. Have you ever created your own constructed language or worked on one? And also, have you ever made any like mods to Esperanto? Like, have you ever been curious about like how could I mess with this feature, or like how could I improve this or that?
Oh, I've done both of those things. Okay, so the first one, there was a community-based project which I led for ages, which was called the Encapsulated Language Project. It eventually died, unfortunately, which happens with a lot of Conlang projects. But like that one there, we were trying to create a Conlang which would encapsulate like specific data inside of words themselves. So for example, the word for pie would actually be
Yeah,
made up of the numbers pi and stuff like that. So like that was like a really cool project. I learned a lot about that because people just went down rabbit holes of trying to encapsulate information. And then also on the language, like trying to, add mods to a language per se. Within the Esperanto speaking world, there was like a debate around pronouns for a very long time, which is something that also existed in the English world.
it was like the maybe a gender neutral pronoun.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what it's kind of become, but like at different times it's meant totally different things. It's like most things. So like people like have their own specific meaning. Like some people want to get rid of like the male and female pronoun, just have re. Basically do what I want to do, but like I just wanted to pre-use the existing it type of thing. And then other people like, no, 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 it's just for like gender neutral. And it was like this big war for a while.
yeah,
Yeah. So like the Esperanto community over there, as you could imagine, is quite cut off from the rest of the world due to, the big firewall that exists. However, younger Esperantists, they can get past that stuff quite easy and then they take part in the international community. However, like anyone who's like, let's say above like 30 type of thing, they're generally not from that age group that bypasses the firewall type thing. And the Esperanto that they use and they speak is basically based on the books that have been there since, Esperanto first entered into China. So they kind of their Esperanto is like kind of a bit older. So it's almost like Zamenhofian, which is like more towards like the foundation of Esperanto as opposed to like modern Esperanto. And it is fascinating because like I remember speaking with them and I had to like pull back on a lot of the modern words I was using and just like kind of use like the core original words to make sure like there was no misunderstandings type of thing. And it also makes sense because obviously Esperanto is a lot more distant for someone who's learning or someone who speaks Chinese. So they're gonna like limit the number of words that they learn because obviously each word it's more of a load on them, it's more of a burden type of thing. So they're just gonna learn the core words of the language. So it
yeah.
is quite interesting.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering what that's like. So that's crazy that you've gotten that opportunity to speak with it. I guess like a continuous Esperanto community for however long it's been in China. Did you get like some history there, or are you
Oh yeah,
aware of
like
that?
Esperanto is it's not like massive in China and anything. Like if we're talking in respect to other Esperanto communities around the world, it's pretty sizable. And also it's had like official government support for like a lot of years as compared to Australia. You have like an Esperanto station, there's Esperanto museums, there's like courses at university. You can become a doctorate in Esperanto at certain universities in China. And I've spoken to people who have done it, and it's really actually quite interesting, is because like here in Australia, people will learn it for a number of reasons, but usually it's like hobby-based type of thing. But over there, the people who have learnt it have generally learnt it due to like actual career reasons, because there's actually some job opportunities. And I remember I was speaking with one guy who was literally had a doctorate in Esperantologio, which is like the study of Esperanto history and stuff like that. And I was asking him like, how'd you get in Esperanto? And he's like, oh, well, when I was at university, someone came and like spoke to our class, and they said, if you get good at English, you're going to have a lot of competition. However, if you get good at Esperanto, there's actually a number of jobs that need to be filled. So basically, a bunch of people just literally learn Esperanto because they're going to get jobs if they got good at it and like government positions and stuff.
Very
So
cool. I did not know that. Yeah, that's really interesting, and it totally makes sense that that given the difference in the I guess the first language of the learners, a very different language family, they use the roots more because it wouldn't make as much sense to use some of the Latinate derived words if it's easier to just break it down further. Like right, having like really compositional words, I guess, is like so where you can break them down and understand what they mean. So
Yep.
am I correct in like assuming that that's sort of how they use it? Is that what you meant before?
Yeah, so it's both that and it's both the fact that they still use the words which are kind of core to the original language. Like there is words in Esperanto now that have replaced words that were like historically the main words type of thing. And what has happened is, these words, like for example, here's a really good example. So in Esperanto, we have a sound which is like a H and it's got like a little hat on top of it, and it's like a really like throaty H sound.
Yep.
And during the history of Esperanto, what happened is like it was predominantly in Europe, and the French, they didn't like this sound apparently, or like there was some group there. They didn't like it. And basically over time, the sound got replaced by K's pretty much like everywhere. Okay. So you'd have like Camille has replaced Gemio type of thing. And
Yep.
like this sound is like so obscure now that it's probably going to become an archaic sound years type thing in Esperanto. However, the sound is not like a difficult sound for Chinese speakers, so they still like use like these H-based words over there, even though they've been replaced by K-based words over in like pretty much everywhere else.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so like the words that people might tend to avoid because they have the H with H hat, I guess. Is it, I guess like a velar fricative, like a like that,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is present in Chinese. That makes sense that they would feel the need to avoid those words, and then that would affect the vocabulary. Very interesting.
And
Okay.
also, like a lot of their materials have been translated from like previous materials from a long time ago, and then they've just kind of kept reusing those materials for learning Esperanto, and they still contain all those words.
True. Yeah, I guess if it's just hasn't been impacted by any sort of like reforms or changes,
Yeah.
modernizations. Okay. Yeah, that I like that. I like that there's some dialectal variation, but it sounds like you're still able to communicate. And
Oh
you
yeah,
also
you can
speak Chinese, right?
easily. Yeah, yeah.
I know that's tends to be a lot more difficult for English speakers, at least in some regards. Like maybe some ways it's a little easier than other languages, but
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm so glad I did like a language like Esperanto before Chinese. Otherwise, I would have given up.
yeah.
Chinese is traumatizing in a lot of ways. So basically, my story started with so my wife is Chinese, and then like obviously, I met my wife, married. And then I'm already really good at this other language. Let's try a new one. And that's basically how it started with that one is like I actually have like a day-to-day need for this language and I just like slowly started, doing a little bit here, a little bit there and stumbling my way through. I'm still not fluent in the language, but I am conversational now. So that's good. I at least know that they're not fighting anymore, which is a good thing.
Yeah, they're just a serious conversation or something. That's funny. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I guess I have studied Chinese in the past. I don't have the same probably kind of motivation as you do, but I I do think like you have to be all in, right? Like you have to you really need to be exposed to it a lot because it's not as I feel like when so I learned Spanish after learning Esperanto and like Esperanto, there's a lot of words that overlap
Yeah.
with English, right? Like so like it's like how do I say international in in Spanish, and
Yeah.
it's just international with a Spanish accent, basically. Um, but you can't rely on stuff like that. There's no equivalent of that for Chinese. So that's like you
Yeah,
have to learn everything.
they're so rare those occurrences that when they do happen, you spot them and it's kind of like refreshing.
That's funny. Yeah, like English loanwords or something like
Yeah, like I know there's probably like a handful, but like the most famous one would just be cafe, which means coffee.
yeah.
So like well,
Oh
like
yeah.
there's not that many.
I actually recently made a video about the etymology of coffee. I think it was originally an Arabic word, but basically everybody was like, "Wait, this drink is awesome. What do they call this?" And then it was just like it was. So then that one stuck. It was like just something that sounds like coffee. Basically, is going to be the word in most languages. Um,
Yeah.
which yeah, I think that's cool. So how often do you use Esperanto, and how often do you use Chinese?
Well, that's hard to say. Like I'll use Chinese in some form or other, like every day.
Okay.
Like mainly just to talk with my in-laws. However, I'm also like I watch a lot of Let's Play videos in Chinese because the one thing like if you want to get like good at a language, you need to obviously absorb a lot of content in that language. And for me, watching people play video games, because I'm a video game developer by trade, is what I enjoy doing. So I'll watch like lots and lots of video games of people just playing it and speaking Chinese and telling my in-laws that I'm hungry type of thing. And, asking them what they've done today type of stuff. So that's where that happens. And then with Esperanto, Esperanto has like different periods, like some periods where I'll just use it like constantly every day, and then there'll be other periods where I use it like once a week type of thing. But it really varies. Like I've got a lot of mates here in Sydney when I meet up with them, like we just speak Esperanto type of thing. So it's kind of similar to Chinese, I guess, in a lot of ways.
I remember, I think I saw that you were interested in Toki Pona at some point. Do you ever pick up decent amount of that, or what was
Yeah,
your
so
experience with that?
interesting one. Okay, so Toki Pona is really easy.
But yeah, no, I was gonna say I agree with your hot take. Actually, I think there's, especially with proper nouns, like there's plenty of words that you could add to the list of 120. I mean, I think most people in the community would say there's probably like closer to like 140 or something now, just given that the language has kind of grown as certain words have became like necessary. But there's also
Yep.
like certain compound words that have probably become kind of lexicalized, right? Like, so, like if
Yeah,
somebody
yeah.
says tomotawa,
Yep,
they don't
car.
they don't really mean like a house that's moving.
Yeah, yeah.
Almost always, if they say that, they're meaning car. So it's basically just a 4 syllable word.
Yeah.
With yeah. So I agree with that. But yeah, I think I do. I think it's really cool. I think people will compare it to Esperanto a lot, which I don't really see why that's necessary, because I think they're very different languages with very different goals. But
Very
I
different,
love both
yeah.
of them. Yeah, I think they're both fascinating.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's definitely an interesting one. Like, but there's very few people that I know that obviously actually speak this language. I do have one friend here in Sydney who actually speaks it really, really well, but he's kind of like a hermit. So like I barely get to, talk with him.
yeah. So did you? How long did you study it, or are you still kind of studying it
Uh, so
passively?
that so I basically, if you look at the history of my channel, there was like a period where I was like, I'm gonna learn this, and then I went for like a month and a half intense, and I even made videos and stuff in the language. And then I kind of stopped making those videos. In fact, I stopped making all videos for a little bit there. But basically, what happened was I produced a bunch of videos, and then that random interest in something else took over, and I went and did that type of thing. So I can read it now, but like I'm probably pretty rusty when it comes to talking
Yeah,
type of thing.
yeah, I can see that. I think especially with a language like Esperanto or Tokipona that's designed intentionally to be for ease of acquisition. I think it comes back pretty easily, because I did notice that I've not actively studied Esperanto for quite a while, but I'm still able to pick up on it pretty quickly, just because just
Mm.
you remember one word, and then that helps you remember 10 other words, right? And kind of
Yep.
fills back up your that part of your brain.
Yeah,
Um,
I kind of had that around when COVID hit. There was about a year where I didn't use it because the majority of my use was locally, and then I
yeah,
wasn't meeting with people anymore. So I kind of like I did like a bunch of other stuff during COVID that I was learning. I literally didn't touch Esperanto for a year, and then I came back and just kind of went straight back into it. Like I was rusty as hell at first, but then like it all came flooding back.
yeah, I like that. I like that. That's how it works, because yeah, I think people will say it's a use it or lose it kind of skill, learning a language, but I think you have to really not use it to lose it. Like, because
Yeah.
my dad, like he never fully learned Italian, I don't think, but he was passively like somewhat fluent when he was a kid, because a lot of the adults around him would speak it. And he says even now, when he hears it, I still pick it up. So yeah, I guess it'll stick with maybe even if I don't study it for the rest of my life, I'll still be able to speak Esperanto, and I'm like 80 years old or something. That'd be funny.
Yeah.
I do like it though. I'm definitely still engaged with that every once in a while. I think it's all about finding opportunities to use it, just like any language.
Pretty
I'll,
much,
I,
yeah.
I force plenty of people to speak Spanish with me. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I do similar things with Chinese. I'll force people to speak, Chinese with me. And like when I'm over in China, they'll want to swap to English, so I just pretend I don't speak English. Should I just tell people I'm not an English speaker?
Yeah, it's like so I'm Dutch and
Yeah.
and I only speak Dutch and Chinese.
I just tell them I'm Ukrainian.
Yeah, Ukrainian, perfect. Yeah, I might have to steal that too. What are your thoughts on, so yeah, we've been talking about how awesome Esperanto is just as a like a way to learn a language, way to experiment with language learning and building words and spreading this easier language to other places. How well do you think it works as a international auxiliary?
I guess we should, because I don't know how many people in your audience actually know like what Esperanto was originally intended
Yeah,
for.
if you could introduce it, that would be great. Yeah.
Yes, so Esperanto it's like a 130-year-old constructed language, and it was designed to be a tool for international communication. Basically, the international world at that stage was mainly Europe or Europe countries of European like influence, basically. So it's got a little bit of all the European language designed to be easy to learn. Now, in the modern world, does it fulfill that need? Now, this is an interesting one because people will say, "Oh no, like it's failed. You know, the international language is English," but there's still, probably a couple of 100,000 people who speak Esperanto from all sorts of countries, and they use it as an international tool. So I guess whether it's failed or not in that endeavor is how you look at the matter. It works for those people, but it hasn't been adopted for everyone. And realistically, I don't think it will ever be adopted for anyone. In fact, I'm pretty much of the idea now that there will be no like constructed language that will come after this that will be able to eventually be fulfilling that goal. And this is due to a number of reasons. One, the time it takes for a language to actually spread, grow a speaker base, get enough, people to do materials in the language, create like whatever you need for that language to spread, takes a very long time. And by the time that happens, that's like 100 years later type of thing. So realistically, what I think is going to happen is that AI is going to advance more and more and more of the coming decades. Then that's going to advance with text-to-speech systems. They're already pretty good, but they're going to get even better. They're probably going to sound lifelike in like 20 years type of thing. And with those two things combined, you're literally going to be living in like the Star Trek age where people are going to be just using tools to translate whatever they need. And in fact, I think the number of people learning languages is going up. And the people who do learn languages are going to be doing it for very specific reasons. It's like, when we transition from horses to cars. So we transitioned from horses to cars. Everyone was using horses. Now everyone's swapped over to cars, but there's still some horses out there. People still use horses. They haven't completely disappeared, but the vast majority of people don't need the horse anymore. I think that's what's going to happen with languages. I think the vast majority of people are not going to be for the language, and those that do are going to do it because they want to do it, type of thing. Because in a lot of places like China, lots of people study English and have absolutely no interest in it.
Yeah, I think it's hard to you can't really force someone. Yeah, we'll pick up right there in about, I don't know, however long it takes to
No
set this back up. But yeah, so just quick break, and then I'll send you the link. All right,
Cool.
Peace.
Peace.
Hi, Nardi from the future here again. Just want to clarify what's going on at this part of the recording / podcast. So the my Zoom session ended, so then I needed to start a new one. I don't know if that was clear at the end of that clip there. But yeah, just started a new room. But my laptop, as if the technical difficulties couldn't have gotten any worse, my laptop's camera was just kind of started glitching out. So then I just started using my phone. So the next part will just be at a different angle and slightly weird. But yeah, that's the only reason things are different. But try to pick up the conversation right where we left off. It took a little bit. So if it seems like it took us a second to remember what the heck was going on, that was on me and my laptop again. But yeah, back to the show.
All right. So we left off, and you were talking about Esperanto as an IAL and potential, the environment in which it was created was as a European
It was basically
IAL.
a unique time in history where it could happen. And now we're in the AI age, so I don't think any future constructed language that wants to fulfill that purpose of a international auxiliary language will take off.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah, that's where we talked about the AI for a second, and I definitely think you're it's a good point that it's the people that are going to be interested in learning a language is going to be a different type of person than it was, in the past, or even from like 100 years ago, because I think um, people regularly needed to learn languages in a lot of places, and in the past, and it's not so necessarily Anglophone world, but there still are people like us that are interested in learning language. So I can definitely agree with that. Um, yeah, I mean it's a little sad, but
I don't see it as a sad thing. I see it more as like they won't be pressured to do anything, learn it. Like if you got two languages, one you want to actually learn and one you have to do for economic reasons. In the future, it would be more along the lines of like, well, you don't really need to learn one. So if you want to learn that one, why don't you just go learn that one? Like it's no longer this like trade-off type of thing.
yeah, that's a good point because it's purely based on like passion and interest, and that's I mean that's with the AI age. It's going to be, it sounds like a lot of things, right? It's going to be based on
Yep.
your interest and maybe less about economic necessity. But that's a I guess that's something we're
Realistically,
all
I,
going to have to deal
I
with.
think this I think this transition though is going to be over quite a long time. Like
Yeah.
it's not going to affect you and me. It's probably not going to affect, anyone who's 10 years younger than us. But people who are like just running around in their nappies right about now, by the time they're adults, they will have this choice of like, do I really want to learn a language or not?
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think, to be fair, I think that's a choice that I kind of had. Like there's no real reason I needed to learn a language. I guess I had an incentive. The two cities I've lived in have been relatively. There's been like a somewhat sizable community of Spanish speakers, but
Yep.
still very much not something I would run into every day. So it's not like a not a requirement anywhere near that. But yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's crazy how well it worked, like how successful of an
Yeah.
idea it was.
The
And
fact that
yeah,
it even got speakers.
exactly, right? Like like that's the Conlanger's dream, like to get
Yeah, yeah,
everybody to
pretty
speak a
much.
Conlang. And Zamenhof was like actually very successful, and it's not just like posthumous or anything. Like in his lifetime, he created this language and got a lot of people on board, which is very cool. Um,
Like realistically, like the first thing is after you pass away, will it live beyond you? Is the next question. And like of all the conlangs out there, there's like Esperanto, there's a couple of that are like, they're kind of hobbling along like the Ido, which is like an Esperanto offshoot. It's got like a couple of speakers, small little groups here and there. But realistically, it's on the verge of death in a lot of ways. However, the only other one which we spoke about was Toki Pona. I can foresee Toki Pona continuing to grow and outlive the founder and all that type of stuff. But there's very few conlangs that actually get like that. So if you are a conlang and you want to make languages, just be prepared that you're going to be like probably doing this solo for the rest of your life.
yeah, no, it's a tough part of that passion. But yeah, I've definitely been interested in conlanging as well. Honestly, it sounds like we had maybe similar um, conlanging artistic goals, because I was very interested in kind of making a very compositional. And I think that's everybody's got some idea of what their perfect language is, and at least
And that's
puts
what
it.
happens with all the new like conlangs that are meant to replace Esperanto. They're like, Esperanto is flawed in, XYZ way. Therefore, I'm going to create a better version. I'm like, yeah, but it's a 1% improvement. How are you going to get all these people
Yeah,
now to move over for 1%?
exactly. Yeah, it's got to be really different. And I think I guess maybe one of my disillusionments recently has been that there really is no way to get like that. Like you can definitely improve um, any existing conlang, at least to your own preferences, right? Like they're not made
Hmm.
specifically for you, and maybe in a way that a lot of people would agree. Those changes are either just going to happen naturally internally with the community, or you're not going to be able to convince everybody, because it's just going to be a slight change. Like I don't think there's a way to like completely rehaul an existing community
Actually,
like
I
that.
saw this in action many years ago. So there was a Esperanto meetup that happened in Asia. It was in Indonesia, and I went to it. It was called the Tri Landa Esperanto Congreso, and I've got like videos of it in my YouTube channel. But anyway, we had people come from Australia, then we had people from China, Japan, Korea, and obviously Indonesia itself, and then a few from like Europe. And like the one actual like event that happened where people like said, okay, You've all got different language backgrounds. Write down what irks you the most about Esperanto and what you would change if you could. And by the end of it, like when we read out everyone's thoughts, it was basically the entire language would change if we like implemented all these, and most of them were contradictory as well.
Yeah, like we want the indefinite article. We don't want any articles. Like it's just yeah, I could easily see yeah, your native language definitely shapes what your idea of a perfect language. Yeah. No, my goal is to make a language so perfect that it convinces everybody it's perfect.
You
Well,
might be at that
yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, no, I'm joking. I do find it a very fun passion, but yeah, yeah, no, that's the let's see that got through most of the prepared questions I had. I did have one about the Chinese perspective on Esperanto, but you did kind of cover that, which is great. You mentioned that, so I actually saw one of your recent videos on kind of interpreting language learning from like almost like from a programmer's perspective. I guess with like kind of symbolic logic and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
so, and you mentioned, I actually didn't know this, that you were a video game developer. Maybe I
Yeah.
remembered that, but from an Esperanto video way back in the day.
So, like with programming side of things, when I talk about programming and language learning, I've basically just like present tools that I've developed to help me, streamline my own like methodologies. But like overall, between coding and actual languages, there's not like a massive overlap. It's just like with programming, I can make tools that help me do what I want to do more. So like, practice my methodology of, have a sentence structure which represents an underlying template within the language and swap out nouns and verbs and stuff like that so that my brain recognizes this pattern more easily as it sees like the same structure with just new words being slotted in and out of. So I use it for that type of stuff, and there's no really tools that do that. You can like manipulate tools like Anki and stuff to do things like that. For me, like learning a language is that it's basically like every day is a little bit of a grind, and you've got to do like all these like little side quests and stuff, to build up your knowledge base. And you have your fun moments, and then you have those moments where you're like, it's boring as hell. Why am I doing this type of thing? And then you've always got that dream at the end, which is your fluency. But in the gaming world, it would be like the ultimate character that you want to build type of thing. And then one day, funnily enough, you finally get there and then you do everything that you wanted to do in it. And just like every other game out there, if you've learned a language, you probably start thinking maybe basically how Duolingo started. And I foresaw this like actually going to happen. But like basically they got a lot of volunteer teachers come in, and these teachers are highly passionate about their languages. They built out like these amazing courses. They committed like hours of their days to, I never did, but I watched the teachers do this. And they built out these amazing courses. And then finally, as Duolingo, got public. What they basically did is like just one day they contacted all the teachers and said, we'll give you a symbolic payment of like basically nothing. You give us all rights to this. If you don't, we're basically just going to shut down that course. Because obviously now, as they're becoming a public company, they're concerned about, volunteers working for them. They could be sued and all this type of stuff. And then they just left all their like these courses that people had put hundreds of hours into like passionately working on, but weren't like, financially beneficial courses for the company to just like, sit there and slowly accumulate problems and errors and stuff, and they don't really care about them type of thing. So my beef with Duolingo, their methodologies or whatever, it's more just with how they treated people in general. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, yeah, and that does suck. I did sort of forget about that. There was I remember actually that was something I found really cool was the language incubators where yeah, lots of passionate people would go
They had
online and
so many great tools. They had like
yeah,
forums, they had the notes, they had the meetups where you could like run meetups and get people
yeah.
locally. And they just killed it all because it wasn't, directly towards their model.
Yeah, I think my time in terms of my passion with Duolingo ended before I guess they ended a lot of that stuff. So there's a lot of languages that you could tell it wasn't a Duolingo necessarily doing this. Like it was people who are passionate about it. It was like I think Hawaiian Creole or something, and like
Yep.
just languages with like a smaller community that you could tell. There, it's not going to make Duolingo a bunch of money. It's going to make these passionate people like happy that they're able
Hmm.
to kind of preserve this these tools, these educational tools, and
Yep.
yeah, so that sucks. But well, the reason I've even brought up Duolingo was because I think regardless of the maybe mess up things they did to their community, they were able to capitalize on that, treating language learning like a game because there for a lot of people it really is like it's like obviously some people and in my case I did get there are certain times where I just kind of wanted to skip a bunch of it, and maybe I wasn't seeing it as a game as much anymore. But and certain people might not like that style. But I do think for like, yeah, if you're somebody who's just learning a language as a game, then an app
Yeah.
that gamifies it is probably right up your alley.
So basically, my whole thing with that is just that when people think about learning the language as opposed to playing these big MMOs, the people go in to play these games, they're like, I know this is going to take hundreds of hours, possibly thousands of hours to become the best of the best, but I'm going to commit to that type of thing. But then when it comes to a language, people are like, where's the shortcut type of thing,
Yeah.
type of thing. Like, so it's like, yeah, just treat both the same. And to me, it's like there's so many parallels between the two.
Yeah, like accepting the rules, right? Like
Yeah.
there's certain rules. Like you gotta learn the simple grammar before you can get to the hard grammar, and there's really no yeah,
Yep.
you can't listen to it while you sleep and and learn the
Yeah,
language.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It is
Plenty of
funny. I'll get a lot of comments about this, and people are like, "Are you going to give me the cheat codes or what?"
no, unfortunately, I wish there's cheat codes. But yeah, I mean, it's like kind of better that it is just there's levels to it, right? And you can kind of gamify it because that's the reason that kind of analogy works well because uh, it's just hard work and hard work times however many days you're able to put into it, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good life lesson there. Actually,
Oh, yeah.
I think I wrote my college essay on language learning because I thought that was and it was like a similar kind of idea. It's just like it's there's no secrets to it, not really. Other than
Yep.
one thing in terms of everybody's like got to be a language guru, right, on TikTok and stuff. I one thing I would say is that is useful that isn't often used is like general linguistics knowledge. I think that can be really helpful sometimes. Like, especially
Oh,
just
I
given,
imagine it totally would.
yeah, like so that's the secret sauce that if there is any. Like, I think it can be really helpful to listen or to learn about a language's history and like their phonology and stuff if you've kind of have that extra knowledge of linguistics. I think that's actually really helpful, especially for like pronunciation and stuff, because yeah, it's hard to like explicitly teach something like pronunciation, like especially like
Hmm.
let's think about Chinese, right? Like the or you're talking about Esperanto, the H hat, right? Like you can't
Yep.
teach that without like first establishing like there can be a different sound system for this language, right? And like you have to kind of like just change your mouth in order to.
It was funny because like if I had that knowledge, it would have made my journey so much easier. But like when I first learned, Esperanto, I actually barely had an understanding of English grammar. Like when I went through school, I went through some pretty shocking and rough schools as I grew up.
Like with that, it's hard to learn your own grammar. Like it's hard to learn grammar in English when it's like you already speak it. Like so it's like
Hmm.
it can be useful to have like a demo language that literally has it as explicit as possible. Like yeah, every verb ends in
And when people ask
yeah.
me stuff like that, like, my wife who's Chinese, she'll ask me about certain things. And like, I'll literally go, okay, what is this grammatically in Esperanto? Because I could just visually
Oh
see it in my
wow.
head and then like swap it back to English.
I do like that that's was your experience because I feel like I I had a similar thing where it was like what like a relative pronoun, right? Like
Yep.
uh Q or in Esperanto or just how all of the correlatives have
Yep.
the same pattern. That was super
Hmm.
helpful because it teaches me that all these words in English when I translate them in Esperanto they have this like rhyme basically, and it's because they share this like grammatical property. So
Yep.
that's definitely a benefit of Esperanto. It's like teaches you grammar like that.
And it's also got like the little bit of extra benefit is it just takes enough grammar from languages that English doesn't have that you can then use that later on. So like you've got the accusative case, which obviously if you then got to go learn Latin, if you've mastered Esperanto and you've got the accusative down, you see all these case systems in Latin. It's not so daunting at first type of thing. And that can also be
Exactly.
applied to, Chinese. Like Chinese kind of has a pseudo version of that type of thing in some ways. And it's like you get like just enough of a bit of a different sound system, just enough of a bit of a different grammar over here, a bit of different words that it's not too daunting when you hit the big boys.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause it is kind of like a training run, right? Because I'm sure, yeah, you said you think it helped you a lot with Chinese and
Yep.
and I definitely think I don't remember what I think So sorry to bring up the D word again, but I think my first language learning experience actually was probably like way back in the day, like right as Duolingo came out. I was like,
Yep.
oh wait, it's 2012 or whatever. I don't remember what year it was, but it's 2012. We're in the future now. We can learn languages with a game now. So I was like, I got to do this. It's the new thing. But then I just don't think I had the motivation at that time
Yeah, I'm
because
actually
obviously like
I'm doing a dreaming Spanish challenge right now because I want to see like what it's like to learn a language without actually like reading it, learning any grammar at all, just like watching videos in it. So have you heard about dreaming Spanish?
no, yeah. What is that?
Okay, so Dreaming Spanish is basically both a website and a methodology, and they've taken the whole comprehensible input to the extreme, where they're basically like they show you videos in the language at the most basic level where they just talk, but they use most simple like words and grammar, and then slowly over time they get more and more advanced. They've got like thousands of videos, and then the whole idea is after like an insane amount of hours, I being like 1,500 hours, you just speak the language and you've learned it like, someone like a kid would if they didn't have any grammar input or anything like that, just watching content. So I'm doing that challenge just because I want to see what that's like because like obviously I've got my own preferred methodologies and I'm curious about this one. But as part of doing this, I'm like, I think like 20 hours in or whatever. It's basically at the moment to me, it just sounds like badly spoken Esperanto Spanish.
Yeah, that's funny.
Because like
Um,
I've got enough English cognates with the Esperanto cognates, I can pretty much guess like half the sentences what they're saying.
that's funny. Yeah, that's honestly I never heard of that, but I do like that. I'm a big proponent of comprehensible input, especially for um sorry that had 10% battery on my phone. But comprehensible input as in for like understanding because I think a lot of people in the United States, especially that I've grown up with will learn Spanish just because it's a common second language
Hmm.
here. But the disadvantage, or basically what the situation usually is that they'll be able to speak it relatively well. They'll understand the grammar. I think the schools aren't terrible with that, and they'll have a good basic vocabulary, but they just can't understand. Like, and I think the best way to get understanding is with comprehensible input. So it depends on what your goals are, but it sounds like you're
Yeah.
just experimenting with it. I think that's actually a great way, like starting with really simple videos and moving up. I'm curious. Yeah, let me know how that goes because I'm definitely curious, and maybe I'll try it with the language that I might be learning soon. So
Yeah, no, that's fine. Like I do plan to release videos. It's probably going to be
that's
like
sweet.
the longest product review in history because I'm learning an entire
Yeah,
language with it.
20,000 hours product history or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. At least by the end of it, I'll be able to say I fully reviewed this, guys.
It's like yeah. I give it about as much time as it's required.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, it'd be
funny.
so fun. That'd be so funny. Like 2,000 hours later. Yeah, I give it a 3 out of 5.
Yeah, that would be a disappointing 3 out of 5 after that much time. But yeah, no, I think that combined with like some sort of because you obviously got to speak, or I mean, it depends on what your goals are, right? If you're just trying to understand it,
Hmm.
that's a valid goal as well. Passive fluency is honestly in some ways like better than I guess if you were only able to speak it, right? Because then it's like you can't hear what anybody says back.
Like
But
I say on my channel, is like first you got to establish what your goals are.
yep, yeah. So yeah, if your goal is to just understand it, that's probably the best way to do it. Honestly, that's my opinion. But the yeah for speaking, you'd want to like maybe look up pronunciation guides and just literally just practice like it's exercise. That's the way I kind of think about it. It's like um
Well,
your
if you want to
the muscles
practice
in your mouth.
speaking, yeah. If you want to practice speaking, there's two different things you got to look at. Like one is obviously your pronunciation. However, that's different to like actively using speaking as in creating thoughts on the fly. So like there's two different ways to practice those types of
Yep.
things.
Yeah, I guess it's like one is like the mechanics of it, which is kind of what I was
Yes.
just saying, like with like using like training your mouth to produce
Yep.
these sounds, and then the other is like um, just being able to. It's really that when everybody's got different definitions for these things, but when I think about fluency, like that's always what I think of is like being able to like say two words and before you're done saying the second word the third word's already like in your head like having that kind
Hmm.
of quick
It
retrieval of
automatically just
words.
flows out without having
Yeah,
to stop and think about it.
like yeah, like you're basically ready to say the next few words as you're saying the current word.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think of as fluency, at least for fluent speaking. Obviously,
Yeah.
we were just talking about passive fluency and stuff, but yeah, I think like the combination of those two, and then like a good dose of one thing that Toki Pona is really good at is teaching is a circumlocution. Like just
No,
you
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
you don't know how to say something, just say like the easiest.
No, no,
And
I've done that a lot.
yeah, no, I mean it's a good skill to have, and I think that's always the dream with a conlang too, is right to have a word that basically just is circumlocution. Like the word describes what it is. But
Yep.
yeah, that'll be my passion project that nobody will ever see, or that nobody will ever learn because I'm not Zamenhof, unfortunately. Um, yeah, let's see. I like that we got some language learning tips in here. That was definitely something I wanted to talk about because you've got some great videos on that. What's like what's something that you do when you learn languages, but like you don't necessarily recommend to everybody else, but like it's something that like really like a video sync.
Crazy goal, I guess, would be, or and even if you still make massive success, like my crazy goal for Chinese is to become like Let's Player in China. You
Very
know, like
cool.
video game playing Chinese video games,
I'll
which
get a
it
kick out of
sounds
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That because I always thought that'd just be freaking cool, stuff. I'm practicing phrases and stuff based around, stuff that you would say in a video game. Like I take these sentences from these other Let's Players and I put them in my Anki and I practice that type of stuff. So it's like everything that I do is directed around that. Language is just like this really big problem, and you just got to chop it up and like start with one little part, conquer that part, and then move outwards, and then slowly over time you'll cover the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a good example because it's like your specific goal that you wouldn't recommend to everybody is that your specific crazy goal, but it is good for people in general to have to definitely establish their goals and potentially to have a shoot for the moon. If you miss, you'll land
Yeah.
upon the stars kind of thing. Because I learned Latin in school, so like I kind of had like
Yeah.
I got to start with like the root, right, and then
Oh, yeah, yep.
and then it's Esperanto's no, it's not a Romance language. It's got heavy Romance influence. And then Spanish, obviously, and then in Spanish actually was a really good platform for learning Italian. I don't get to use it as much, but I still think I've decent amount of fluency just from like passive, like my own little personal dreaming Italian course. But yeah, it'd be so cool to just like cover them all, because it's at least in the past it was like dialect continuum, right? So like
Well, it's probably the quickest way to become like a hyper polyglot is like, hit all the languages in the same
yeah,
family because the
yeah.
more
I'll
you get,
start.
the next one gets easier.
Then I'll go to the next branch of the Indo-European language family, and then just
Yeah, yeah.
then get to different language. That'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be my crazy goal. I'll be a hype omniglot or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
slowly walk outwards. Don't go from one family all the way to another.
yeah. That's well. Hey, that maybe you can
Meet
start
in the
on
middle.
the
Yeah,
yeah. Me in
yeah.
the middle.
Next, I'll hit like, Tibetan, and then that should get me over towards, maybe the Turkish languages, and I can some like worm my way into Europe via that.
I have a good friend who's Turkish and like ancient Greek. Like those are his two languages. It's just like kind of crazy. Different language families, entirely different like communities that you'd speak with. Well, I mean, you wouldn't really speak ancient Greek with too many people. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess that's where it's like the passion is motivating you for sure. Um, so just to where it's 7 minutes left in this one, so
Yep.
we can end in about five.
Cool.
But one other thing I wanted to talk about was accents in the Toki Pona community.
Yeah.
You can say Toki Pona or you can say Toki Pona. Like people will criticize Esperanto's phonology, but like I've never heard a strong enough Esperanto accent where I couldn't understand
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So
pretty much.
yeah. So what are your thoughts in general about maybe other languages like accents, learning accents? How important is an accent?
Well, when it gets
All
to
that
a
stuff.
natural language, this is a totally different ball game. So,
Yeah.
for example, I can talk from my wife's perspective and my own. So my wife, who speaks English, she learned English, she came to Australia. She's accustomed to the Australian English accent. But when we go to the cinemas and we watch a movie, most movies are produced in America. in English, she will not understand. So I will like sit next to her and I will just translate to Australian English. So I'm literally just repeating the words of the actor
Wow.
so she can understand it because like she hasn't quite yet got used to the American accent. And like when I went to China as well, funnily enough, it's like from one region to another is they don't even hear it really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah,
it's
that's
just Chinese.
well, yeah, because I think a lot of people would probably be surprised that your wife is so accustomed to Australian accent that she does, because I guess it's just like I especially, I mean, unless it's a really strong Australian accent, I basically just perceive it as just like just a I don't perceive myself as like knowing another accent, you know, like it's like
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you hear
It
another
just
language, you
sounds
understand.
different. I'll watch. She'll be watching like movies in Cantonese, and she's like, well, I guess so. You know, like like it's not. She doesn't really consider it as that much of a difference to her, even though like realistically, it's probably the difference between English and French in a lot of ways
Yeah,
because she just grew
yeah,
up with like Cantonese TV.
yeah. I think if it was compared to European languages, I've heard it definitely be like considered a separate language from
Yeah,
Mandarin. Um, Interesting.
and
So
it
yeah,
is like
yeah. No, no. I mean, I remember like seeing like the ways that it would be pronounced. I've never learned Cantonese, but
yeah,
or like tried to learn it, but I know that it's very different. At least from my perspective as somebody who doesn't really know Chinese, but
yeah.
at least knows enough to like maybe see what would be considered the same language as it. Yeah, I
But yeah, so I'd say accents that when they get to native languages, they play a big part, both in understanding and also, communicating.
agreed. Yeah, I like the example of people maybe not understanding a people who are not as exposed to lots of different accents
Hmm.
in the outback, maybe not understanding as much.
I actually had this when I went to China. So we went to like this pretty remote area to go check out like some traditional villages. And I was like this old woman in a shop there. And I wanted to ask her if she's got like this prune juice type of drink that I like. It's called Swan Mei Tang. Anyway, like I asked her, and the old woman was like, ah. And I was like, so I repeated the word like slowly. I was like, Swan Mei Tang, like totally enunciated. And she was just like, ah. And I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And then like this other Chinese woman walked in and just went, ah, swam my tongue, said it. And then the old woman's like, ah, mayo, like we don't have. And I was like, that's literally what I just said. Like this other woman understood, but like obviously she had the same thing as the Australian throw.
Yeah, kind of have to train yourself in a number of accents to really um, really be able to
And it's
understand
something
them
you just
all.
have to accept as well. It's like you're in one area, you're totally understandable, you're happy, you understand everyone else, then you cross like, to the next city and suddenly no one understands you anymore.
Yeah, that's that is the hard reality sometimes of language learning is that you're usually learning one specific variety and there's other ones out there. And you definitely kind of it's not like a crazy step to learn a different
No.
accent. Well, it is probably for like Cantonese, but for an actual like just an accent, like it is a step you can make. It's just you do have to actively like learn a new accent when if you want to learn the Spanish of a different country as opposed to like Mexican Spanish or what most people learn. Really appreciate you spending the time to yeah to fill me in on some of the questions I had.
Yeah, no problem, man.